Hi and welcome back. Every so often I get a question to which, if I were to type a proper response, I would basically have written a tutorial script, and it's only a little bit of extra work to turn it into one of these low-effort videos I've been doing recently. If you're not a fan of these, let me reassure you that they're so much quicker and easier to create than the proper videos, where I create an entire mix for examples, that they don't in any meaningful way take time away from creating those. Anyway, this one is about creating separation in a mix. Yes, there is a magic trick that the pros use to create separation and clarity in their mixes, but there's a big old catch with it. I'll come to that shortly. First, let's be clear what we're really talking about. Separation is an illusion. There is no separation in a mix. Everything is combined into a single stereo waveform. It's all blended together like a cake mixture. It is a mix, after all, and what we do is called mixing. Separation between parts is something that happens inside your head when you listen to your mix, and hopefully also inside your listeners' heads in a similar manner. But it's not real, it's an hallucination. Let's pause for a moment to consider the implications of that. First of all, the mind-blowing signal processing power of our brains that can listen to a full mix and figure out in real time which of those millions of partials belong to the guitar, or the piano, or the drums. Second, you don't ever perceive reality itself. The data from your ears is significantly processed and interpreted before you get to actually hear it. So when we say that a mix has good clarity and separation, what we really mean is that it's easy for our brains to decode and split into its component parts. There's no ambiguity about which partials belong to which parts. It's immediately obvious what's going on, and we can separate the parts effortlessly. And when a mix lacks clarity, that means we have to work harder to interpret it. It's not immediately obvious how that big mess of partials is supposed to be understood. It requires more mental effort to pick out individual parts and resolve what notes they're playing. Human hearing is very complex, and there are many subtle cues and clues that can help make it easier to parse a mix as a listener. But there's one overwhelmingly important concept, mastery of which is what really separates the amateurs from the pros: frequency masking. If there's something loud happening at a specific frequency, that will mask other quieter signals at similar frequencies, and you won't hear them. And so the thing that defines a mix that has clarity is the most important frequencies for each part are unobscured by any other parts. And that's something that needs to start at the arrangement stage. A perfect arrangement will, as they say, mix itself. The best example of that is a symphony orchestra. I would urge everyone to go and hear a good orchestra play in a good hall at least once in your life. It doesn't have to be boring and highbrow. Pick a program full of classic movie bangers by the likes of John Williams if you like. That might even be better. Everyone knows movie music, right? It's quite an experience to hear that sound coming directly from the instruments on the stage with no post-production and not a transducer in sight. Obviously, in a pop music context, nothing actually literally mixes itself. You still need to set a good balance. You'll probably still use compression and EQ and reverb and so on. What this really means is that none of the parts fight each other at all. And when you just push up the fader, they already sit in the right place without obscuring anything or being obscured by anything. There is a very good reason why so much music sticks to tried and tested combinations of instruments. It might be possible to rescue a mediocre arrangement with a really stellar mix. But if the arrangement sucks, the mix will also suck, and there's not a lot you can do about that. The magic trick that the pros use is to recognise where the arrangement was trying to get to, then finish off and polish the job with EQ. If there's an important frequency in the guitar part, you cut that frequency out of everything that's competing, instead of, or as well as, boosting that frequency in the guitar part. Using EQ to carve out space for parts makes a massive difference. I believe it's the ability to do that that mostly accounts for the general improvement in production standards since the 1960s. But there's a big old catch. The problem is, how do you know what frequencies to cut or boost in which parts? You can't just pick them at random. Well, you can, but you're unlikely to get good results. The usual glib answer that the old pros will give you is, just use your ears. But that's only really part of the answer. What they really mean is, Use your ears specifically to dial in EQ all day, every day for 20 years. Then you'll find it as easy as I do. So I can confirm that approach works, but it's not what you really want to hear when you're just starting out. And I'm convinced it's possible to speed up the process. I was classically trained as a child on the violin. Wasn't I adorable? While I don't approve of all aspects of classical music education, the ear training, to recognise intervals, chords or cadences by ear, is excellent and has been invaluable in a non-classical context as well. I'm of the opinion, although I can't prove it, that anyone could train their ears in that way if they put in the time and effort and followed a well-established pathway such as you get with a classical music training. And likewise, I think anyone can train their ears to hear in terms of frequencies. But there doesn't seem to be the same kind of established formal training regime available for audio engineers. Certainly I didn't get any. I just picked it up on the job. Maybe they teach that at the audio schools, but I haven't heard much about it if they do. If I was in charge, the ear training would be a required module that you couldn't graduate without passing. So anyway, I'm finally going to get to the real point. Lots of people keep telling me that I should create a commercial course, that they would love to buy some kind of mixing workshop from me. And they're probably right, I probably should do that. The problem is I've been putting all my best stuff out for free, so I wasn't sure what was left for a paywalled course. But maybe this is the thing. It would probably be the most valuable contribution I could make. If I created a comprehensive ear training regime, is that something you'd be willing to pay for? Perhaps I should clarify what I have in mind. There were broadly 3 aspects to my own ear training. The most important from a live engineering perspective was the ability to identify the frequency of a sine wave, at least to within a third of an octave. Why a sine wave? Because that's what feedback is, when it's just a single frequency. Live engineers need to be able to recognise the frequency and grab the closest band to it on a graphic EQ, or perhaps these days with digital consoles they might go after it with a parametric, but in that case you need to identify the frequency even more precisely. This is especially important if you're mixing monitors, and if you want to make a career of it, you'll need to get good enough to identify that frequency before it actually rings out, when it's still just threatening to. To be fair, this skill has been much less important in the studio than it was for my live career, and I'm probably quite rusty with it these days. But weirdly, it seems like a very different skill to the next one I'm going to talk about, which is identifying lumpy pink noise. Live engineers regularly pump pink noise through systems to check the frequency response and make sure everything is working correctly. When on monitors, the first thing I would do is pink all the wedges, the drum fill, side fills, and it would immediately be obvious if one of them was missing high frequencies or something. And once I'd tuned my ears into the sound of flat pink noise, it would also be immediately obvious if, for example, the drum fill was honking wildly at 800 Hz. But the third, and by far the most important aspect, was actually EQing instruments in the context of a mix and EQing full mixes. I'm able to recognise when there's too much 100 Hz, for example, because of the thousands of times I've boosted or cut that frequency on every type of instrument you can imagine, from trombones to tablas. The goal is to be able to listen to a mix and, instead of thinking, those drums sound a bit shit, you can instead think those drums sound like they need a cut at 500 Hz. In order to do that, you need to be familiar with the sound of too much 500 Hz on drums so that you recognise it when you hear it. So what I'm imagining is a series of videos, each of which focuses on a different frequency. We'll start with a sine wave, then filtered noise, then we'll dive in deep and listen to what that frequency does to a range of different types of signals and full mixes, alternating between cutting and boosting so our ears don't get accustomed and we keep hearing the changes. And I'll talk to you about what I'm hearing when there's too much or too little of that frequency, and attempt to come up with suitable adjectives, like, for example, too much 1K sounds shouty. It feels pleasingly appropriate to make a separate video for every band of a 31-band graphic. However, some of those frequencies would require longer videos than others, so I reserve the right to change my mind about that. I'm not going to pretend that watching those videos will turn you into a pro engineer. You should probably be deeply suspicious of anyone making that claim. But they'll give you a method you can use to train your ears in the single most important aspect of audio engineering, And I'm confident that if you continue that method and do a bit every day, you'll improve a lot faster than I did when I first started out. So, on a practical note, what platform should it go on? And how much should I charge? I could keep it on YouTube and make the videos available at a certain membership tier, but that doesn't feel optimal. I thought about creating an OnlyFans. That's a platform where you can sell videos, right? I gather it's quite popular these days. Part of me is quite amused at the thought that I could have an OnlyFans that was totally 100% SFW. But perhaps there are better options. Let me know which platform you'd prefer to see this on down below in the comments. Or if you're not remotely interested and would literally rather burn your money, you can tell me that as well. It's all good. That's all. Thanks for watching.